This is our world.
It's beautiful.
Powerful. Challenging.
There's so much wonder.
It inspires me.
Everything has a story.
And we all have something to give.
We're making important changes.
If you don't fail, you don't learn.
These are the kids that are going to be running the world tomorrow.
You need people to push the boundaries.
We're the ground zero of climate change.
These are criminals, and I'm going to go after them.
I'm here to get people to act. Everybody can make the world a better place.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to National Geographic. My name is Jonathan Baillie, and I am Chief Scientist here at the Society. And it is a great honor to be opening the first Half Earth Day event in the public forum. It's obviously inspired by E.O. Wilson and his book on Half Earth, which really encourages us to be so much more ambitious in terms of what we're thinking about when we think about protecting the planet. And we're very fortunate in this session to have 5 amazing speakers. They all have one thing in common. They think big, and they've proven that you can be successful with large-scale conservation. They have also demonstrated that we need to think bigger. And I think when we hear their talks, this should be infectious, and that we should scale our own ambition. And when we leave this room, we should help scale the ambitions of others, so we start thinking more ambitiously about conservation globally. Now, when the Society started in 1888, there was 1.5 billion people on the planet. There are now over 7 billion people on the planet. And by 2050, we'll have well over 9 billion people on the planet. Now, this has had unprecedented impacts on the world's species and ecosystems. In fact, we've converted the world's ecosystems more in the past 50 years than any time previous in human history. And if current trends continue, there won't be much wildlife left. There won't be many wilderness spaces left for our children and grandchildren. And this would be devastating. This would be devastating in an ethical sense. How could we be part of a society that just allows so many species to disappear? It would be devastating from a health and security perspective. How could we allow our planet to be in a position where it can't provide the benefits that all life needs? It would be devastating from an economic perspective. How could we shut down ecological systems so much that they can't provide the benefits that humanity requires? And it would be devastating from a cultural perspective. We've evolved for millions and millions of years with millions of other species. And how can we call ourselves human if we want to step forward with without all these other evolutionary partners? Now, each one of you has seen this change. If you have a favorite place that you go back to every year, you'll see that there has been massive transformation. When you go up in a plane and you look down, it doesn't take very long to just wonder how we could have had such an impact on all the world's ecosystems. And this hasn't gone unnoticed. There are major targets to try and protect the planet. In fact, in 2010, there was the Aceh biodiversity targets. And among them, there was a target to conserve or protect 10% of the oceans and 17% of the land. And within that, we've got to about, depending on how you look at it, about 3% of the oceans and about 15% of land. But were those targets set on the best science? No. Were those targets set on what society wants? No. Those targets were set on what a few bureaucrats in that room thought was potentially possible at that given time. We know that 10% of the oceans and 17% of the land isn't going to stop an extinction crisis. It's not going to allow the Earth to provide the major services that we all need. And when it comes to what people want, I was really curious, because people often argue that society doesn't really want to protect that much of the natural world. So I got involved in a survey. We did a survey in South Africa and China and Brazil, the UK, America. And the amazing thing was that across the board, people thought that we should put 50% aside for other forms of life, both on land and in the ocean. Even my son said, yes, Dad, I think we should put at least 50% aside. There's some innate characteristic within us that believes in sharing at least. Now, there is some good news. We had a meeting with the top scientists in this space this morning, and I asked the question, how many of you believe that we could actually get to 50%? And almost every hand in the room went up. It's going to take some restoration, it's going to take hard work, but it is possible. And there's more good news. We have some amazing young conservationists coming up showing that it is possible. And we'll have 5 of them speaking to us today. We'll hear about stories from the heart of America, from across Africa, from from Chile and Argentina, and also the oceans around the world. These, to me, are the real celebrities. I mean, we have film stars and we have movie stars, sports stars and music stars. But this group is in a different category. This group is charting a future, a path for all life. This group is engineering a future that is truly sustainable. And introducing them, we have an amazing chair. His name is Jamie Shreeves. Now, Jamie came to National Geographic in 2006. He is a contributing writer to National Geographic. He was the former deputy chief editor of National Geographic magazine. And before he came here, he was a freelance writer. And he focused on biology, and he focused on human evolution. And Jamie is a true polymath. So I think he'll be able to cover all topics that we have here today. And with that, I would like to invite Jamie Shreeves up to the podium. Thank you.
I think that's the first time I've been called a polymath. Hope it's not the last. Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's really a pleasure to be here with this great panel. But when I was asked by Beth Foster to do this, I started asking some people around, my friends, my family, you know about Half Earth and this movement to try to preserve half the planet's resources for the 10 million other species? And as you might guess, the response I usually got was, yeah, right. That can't happen. Impossible. It's a zero-sum game. What are you going to do with the people? All the reasons why this could never happen, right? Well, that's true if you think from a particular state of mind, where we are now, right? If there was an opportunity for us to be able to look forward into the future and see what would happen without Half Earth, I don't think people would want that either. I think they'd much rather go for the other option. But there's an example of somebody who did get a chance to go forward and look into the future, and I want to channel Ebenezer Scrooge here for a second, okay? Because as you all know, Ebenezer was one of the worst examples of humanity that's ever been put down on a piece of paper, and he had the opportunity to visit with the ghost of Christmas past and the ghost of Christmas present. They just kind of softened him up a little bit. But when he got to the ghost of Christmas future was when Ebenezer, the bean-counting, snarling, greedy capitalist that he was, began to see what was be the result of his behavior. And it was pretty devastating. First of all, he was no longer there. He was dead, and nobody cared. And Tiny Tim was dead, and his family, the Cratchits, were in grief and wildly in debt. And there were charwomen and neighborhood women coming in, tearing down his bed curtains and just basically destroying whatever he had. And he looked at this picture of devastation, and as you recall, the ghost of Christmas Future looks a lot like death, right? And he says, "Please assure me, O ghost, that these things, these shadows that you show me, are the things that may happen. But if I change, if I alter my behavior, they will not happen. Is that right?" And I'm paraphrasing. And the ghost doesn't answer. But that's the key. When Ebenezer Scrooge says, "If I alter my behavior," because if we do alter our behavior now, then that future, that dystopian devastation that we see in front of us, with Tiny Tim is the planet for us. He is everything that we are the steward of. Cannot happen. Will not happen. So can we alter our behavior? Well, it turns out we already are altering our behavior. As Jonathan pointed out, there's been some progress made. 150 years ago, there were no protected areas. Now we have 15%, or whatever the figure is correct, I'm not sure exactly, of terrestrial land that is somewhat protected. Is it enough? Not even close. But things are changing. And they're changing in a direction that has everything to do with the panel today. I'd like to quote from Ed's book, Half Earth. If you haven't read it, you should. "Large conservation programs, like new scientific discoveries, start with a heroic age. A few individuals push forward, risking failure and harm to their own security and reputations. They have a dream that does not fit the norm. They accept long hours, personal expense, nagging uncertainty, and rejection. When they succeed, their idiosyncratic views become the new normal. Their individual stories are then rightfully seen as epics. They become part of environmental history." Well, we have some of these heroic individuals with us today.